All right, so if we hop over to ESPN, we can see that there's quite a bit of basketball news that's happened over the last 24 hours. So pretty excited to get into this. So with that, let's start with the first one, which is going to be regarding Zion Williamson. So he just crossed his 100-game milestone for his career, and through his first 100 games, he is starting to look like one of the best players to ever do it, or at least he has the potential to become one of the best players to ever play the game. So you can see that he is only the 12th player in NBA history to record 2,500 points in his first 100 games. So he is already proven to be one of the best young scorers in the league. And to make it even more exciting, he's doing it on a very high shooting percentage. So he's already averaging 60% career shooting for his whole career. So while he is on the floor, his talent is just unmatchable, even at such a young age. So it will be very exciting to see how his career progresses over the years.
If he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, so that's his big thing so far is he is getting injured very frequently. And he does have a situation with the way he walks that puts a little bit more strain on his lower body. This was something that doctors were mentioning as a concern due to his weight about a year ago. So I'm sure that's something that he's working on behind the scenes. So I'm sure that that will be something that gets addressed here in the near future. But just with someone of his athleticism and size and strength and speed and just everything put all into one explosive package, it does come with the potential for injuries to happen, which we have seen throughout his young career so far. So as long as he's able to stay healthy, he should be continuing to chase the great players of the game. So just thought that was a fun one to cover really quick, and then we can come over here. So actually, I think it would be.
Oh shit, I muted my mic. Real quick before you go into the next thing, I was gonna say, because before, Zion was looking like a bust until this year. Because, like, gaining weight, obviously not, getting injured, not as. I don't know, it just didn't seem like he, like, put as much effort in as he is now.
I would say that it seemed like, yeah, I guess I got the impression he was putting in the work. I just got the impression that his body wasn't ready for the NBA speed, the speed of the game
Oh,
in the
you know what?
NBA.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I think his coaching staff is doing a good job of really limiting his exposure to situations that could lead him to injuries and such.
Yeah.
I mean, he is getting injured a lot, but whenever he does get like a minor injury, they'll take him out and rest him as much as he needs. So he's not aggravating any small injuries and letting them fester into something a lot larger. So I think he's, I would agree that it was pretty nerve wracking the first stint because he was so prone to injuries. But I I would say we're at the point where he's starting to look like he's NBA ready. And I mean his talent has always been NBA ready, but I think his body is complete at this point to where he can handle all forms of explosiveness that the NBA demands. So that's how I would look at it. I don't know. I see him as a really hard worker though, so I think he's always had that aspect to his game to some degree.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a casual. I just got the wrong impression of him.
Yeah, I think it was the body. I think he wasn't he wasn't really cut and lean. He was just
He was a big guy.
pure mass. Yeah, which you can get away with in college because it's not quite as explosive as the NBA. But when you have that mass paired with the explosiveness of the NBA, it definitely makes you nervous about injuries. At least it did for me, and it sounds like it does for everyone else too. So, but this Kris Middleton article, so it looks like Kris Middleton is planning to make his return Friday. So this will be his season debut, and this is really big news. So this is going to be the first game of the season for him, and he is the second leading offensive option for the Milwaukee Bucks, who have consistently been a top 3 pick to win the East over the last, say, 3 to 5 years. So now that he's back, that's going to add a weapon for Giannis Antetokunmpo to be able to take a lot of the pressure off of himself offensively so that they're not demanding as much out of him as an individual. So the Milwaukee Bucks should have their full team back together and everything running full steam ahead after Friday. And with how close the Eastern Conference has been this year, that's actually a pretty exciting development. You can see that Boston has a 2-game lead on Milwaukee, and Cleveland is pretty close behind too, 4 games back. So Boston had a pretty slow start to the season, and since then they've went 9-1 in their last 10, and they've won 5 games in a row. So they are by far the hottest team in the NBA right now. And the Milwaukee Bucks have been consistent this year. So they've been first or second in the East all year long. So they started good and they've been playing good the whole year. And this has been without Middleton. So I think when they bring Middleton back, he might be a little bit rusty at first. So it might be something like a J curve where you play a little bit worse the first couple games, or he kind of gets his feet under him. And then after he's back to himself, they should really start stringing together some momentum to start chasing down Boston. And then I think that is also a nice segue into our next article, which is regarding Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. So this article is talking about the big man on Cleveland and how there's kind of a big man revelation going on in the NBA right now. I think this has to do a lot with the rule changes that took place over the offseason. There's a lot more of the violations being called, like travelings. Like if you get Stephen Curry had 2 travels in a row the other night on step backs. He would do a step back where he would land with both feet. So you lose your pivot foot, or I don't know, he didn't land right and he lost his pivot foot and ended up using a pivot foot and got back-to-back trebles. So it's just, they're making it harder on the guards. So they're calling more violations and they're calling less fouls. So I think they're letting the big men kind of bang like they used to. So this is making it more effective to start using big men again. So you're starting to see some teams pop up like the Cavaliers, the Timberwolves, for another example, that are starting to run double big men. And I think the Cavaliers are probably the most successful implementation of it this far, at least if you take into consideration chemistry also. Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley are having an incredible couple years starting last year and continuing into this year. And I think the interesting part about this is whenever you have Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley on the floor together, the Cavaliers are winning just about every game. So to start the year, the Cavaliers had a couple of quick games against Boston. And this is when both teams were healthy for the most part. They had all of their major players for the most part. And the Cavaliers ended up beating Boston in overtime their first 2 matchups. So the Cavaliers are actually 2-0 against Boston. They have struggled against the Milwaukee Bucks, But I think that when the Cavaliers do have their big men healthy, they are one of the best teams in the league. And you can see this even starting last year. The Cavaliers were third in the Eastern Conference until Jarrett Allen got injured for the second half of the year, at which time they fell off and they actually dropped far enough to fall out of the play-in lock-in, and they dropped down into the playoff play-in, which they ended up losing. So their season kind of was a dud last year after Jarrett Allen got injured, but it's just whenever you have the Cavaliers full team on the floor, they are a threat to beat anybody in the league. And I would argue they might even be the favorite. So that is something to pay attention to also. The top three teams in the Eastern Conference are going to be extremely exciting to follow going forward this year. So I think the Cavs, the Bucks, and the Celtics are just going to be neck and neck this year all the way through. So I'm excited to continue watching that going forward. Is there any ideas you wanted to throw in before I move on to Western Conference?
No, I mean,
all right.
I mean,
there is a good segue also. So,
oh, what's up? Yeah.
I was going to say, just the fact that we're talking about the new big men kind of style of play with the Twin Towers. You have a lot of teams trying to get the two big men on the team.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Timberwolves were the Western Conference implementation of this. So,
okay.
Over the offseason, the Minnesota Timberwolves traded for the Utah Jazz's Rudy Gobert. And this was a huge trade. The Minnesota Timberwolves gave up pretty much like every asset they had outside of their starting five. So they gave away Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, several draft picks. It was just like everything that they had available, they traded for Rudy Gobert. And that being said, they do have one of the best starting fives in the league. They have point guard D'Angelo Russell, shooting guard. We'll use Anthony Edwards at shooting guard. We'll use Jalen Noel at small forward. And then power forward, you have Karl Anthony Townes here and Rudy Gobert at center. So this is a really exciting lineup as you have two big men on the same team, which these days no one does that. So like you have some teams that don't even have a big man, like the Houston Rockets a couple years ago.
Yep.
They were running like someone that was like 6'6" at center as their tallest player.
Jesus.
So now you have
tall,
a team,
like out of all the sports, you think 6'6" is a tall ass person, but in the NBA that's like tiny.
Yeah, no, if you're 6'6", chances are you're probably the shortest one in the room. Not really. I mean, but like out in college, I mean, in high school, like I would walk around and I'd be the tallest person at the school, like
the player,
I wouldn't have to look up to anyone.
The player.
College is the exact opposite. There was two people I would not have to look up to. So it's just like
the player,
the land of giants.
Dotson. You know who Devon Dotson is?
I've heard the name. I haven't really followed him too much though.
He was Kansas's point guard, and it's like
I think he's actually doing well this season.
Yeah.
In limited minutes.
I mean, he
hasn't got much of an opportunity.
Like
his name pop up.
He's very, very, very quick. But the one thing I will say is, he, like, going like what was I gonna say? Like during the games, he looks like the smallest guy on the court. But I've seen him walking around campus. He stands like half a head taller than everybody. I think. Or am I thinking of someone else?
Yeah, that's the way it works, man.
Well, hold on.
As soon as you get on that basketball court, if you're not over 7 feet, you're a midget.
No, he's only 6'1". He's an inch taller than I am.
But yeah, the double big man thing is something that the league seems to be testing this year. And I think it's working in some scenarios and not working in others.
But
it
is interesting that they are testing it.
Yeah, and I think this experiment is really fun to watch because you have the best defensive player in the league in Rudy Gobert paired with the best offensive big man in the league.
Yeah.
And actually, let me rephrase that. Not the best offensive, the best scoring big man in the league. Because I would say Jokic is obviously the best offensive big man in the league because he can score the ball, he can set up his teammates, he can get offensive rebounds, he can set screens. Anything you want Jokic to do on offense, he's going to do at the highest rate of any big man just about this game has ever seen. But Karl Anthony Townes can score the ball better. He's actually one of the league leaders in 3-point percentage. So even being a 7-footer, he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. And he can take the ball off the dribble. He can take defenders off the dribble. So if you go out and you close out on him, he can hit you with a pump fake. And as soon as he puts that ball on the floor, he's able to hit you with Euro steps, and he's got good footwork and all the above. So you got the Twin Towers. One of them's one of the best defense, and the other's the best offense. So I thought that was extremely interesting going into the season, especially when you pair it with D'Angelo Russell, who's one of the best pick and roll point guards in the league, and then Anthony Edwards, who has potential to become a star player in this league for many years to come. But it seems like this experiment in Minnesota is not working out too well. And it's just, you have so many different factors going on that it's kind of hard to figure out what's going wrong out there. You don't know if it's the chemistry behind the Twin Tower layup. You don't know if it's D'Angelo Russell's usage because he's having a terrible start to the year. You don't know if it's Anthony Edwards trying to make that next step up from a good player to a star player. So you have a lot of different aspects here. They also have a pretty bad bench unit. So it's just kind of hard to pinpoint. So I think now that Karl Anthony Townes is out, you'll be able to see the team running without him and just using a single big man on the floor. So I think this will be a good chance to see how much of this is chemistry issues with the Twin Towers and how much of this is actually D'Angelo Russell having a bad year or Anthony Edwards just trying to figure out where he fits into the offense. Because he mentioned that also as something that he was personally dealing with in the first couple games is he didn't really know where he fit into the offense. So he was just trying to play a little bit passive. So I think now that Karl Anthony Townes is out, you'll be able to see how Rudy Gobert and D'Angelo Russell are able to run that two-man pick and roll game. Because Gobert is one of the best big man pick and roll players in the league, whereas D'Angelo Russell is one of the best ball handler pick and roll players in the league. So with Townes out, you might see some more usage in that set. So you might be able to see more efficient scoring from D'Angelo Russell. And also, if he's scoring more efficiently, that should take some of the pressure off Anthony Edwards. So maybe his scoring gets more efficient too. And you just see a more efficient team all around. So maybe this is the chance for the Timberwolves to realize that Karl Anthony Townes and Rudy Gobert don't play well together on the floor. So I don't know. This is something that I find interesting from that aspect. So they very well could be one of the best teams in the league, as they have one of the best starting fives in the league. They just need to get it figured out as to where to play what players at what time. Kind of like the Lakers with Russell Westbrook and LeBron James, kind of just being two similar players and needing to play them at different times and bring Russell off the bench. You can see that's actually working pretty well for them out in Los Angeles these days. So, did you want to mention anything about this before we move on?
No, not really. Again, I'm not. See, I'm only saying no because I'm not too familiar with the situation, so I'm kind of like listening to you.
No, you're good, man.
Yeah, I would.
I'm the same way. As soon as we start talking about hockey or baseball, it's just like
ooh, what does he
the
have to
best
say?
way I can provide value is maybe throw in some statistics here and there that go off what you're saying, or as long as you're talking and I'm not talking when we're talking about hockey and baseball, I think that's the best way I can provide value. So
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
not saying you don't provide value to basketball. I'm
No,
just
I
saying
got you. I got you.
I understand what you're saying. Let me quit ranting and let's get back to sports. So right now I have the daily fantasy point leaders for basketball pulled up. As yesterday you had a bunch of huge games by individual players. So you had Devin Booker and Jayson Tatum put up historic games. Both of them, if you average their 2 points, scored 50 points a game. So it's not every day you see someone dropping 50, and we got two of those last night. And to make it even more exciting, you can see Booker did it on really good shooting. He was 20 of 25 from the field. He was 5 of 6 from free throws, and he added 6 3-pointers on top of that. So Devin Booker had a MVP style game last night, as well as Tatum. He had 49 points and 11 rebounds, so he did that on a double-double. And he also had pretty good shooting. He wasn't as efficient from field goal, but he was 11 of 12 from free throw, so he was knocking down easy buckets that they needed. And you can see the free throws that he had were about the margin of victory that they had over Miami. So his free throw shooting did play a pretty nice role in their win. And on top of that, what makes it even more impressive is he did it on 1 turnover. So with having the ball in your possession that much and being asked to make plays while you have the ball, to only make 1 huge mistake the entire game is pretty impressive. So I just wanted to mention those two. And as a bonus, now that I'm thinking about it, actually, we'll do 2 bonuses for this screen. You have Anthony Edwards, as we were just talking about, Minnesota. He just had a really good game, so maybe you can see the start of that offensive efficiency for Edwards and Russell beginning now that Karl Anthony Townes is unavailable. So nothing against Karl Anthony Townes, but just more so the chemistry of the grouping that they have on the floor. So huge game by Anthony Edwards. And then scrolling down, Zion Williamson also had a huge game. So he is continuing to play at a very high level. So just wanted to kind of bring that up because we were just talking about it. And now you can see it actually being played out in action as we, not as we speak, but last night. And then with the performances last night, I think a lot of people on Twitter are starting to discuss who should be the MVP of the NBA. We're starting those conversations, even though it's pretty early on in the year. So if we hop over to the 2023 NBA MVP odds, you can see that you have 2, 4, 6, 8 different sources of odds. And basically what this does is it takes your best odds and it ranks them by best odds. So you can see the best odds you can get for Doncic are plus 300, whereas the best odds you can get for Tatum are plus 325. So I would say that Doncic and Antetokunmpo are right now leading the running for the MVP of the NBA. But Jayson Tatum is just so close behind that he deserves to be in the conversation also. So looks like this year the top 3 runners for MVP are Doncic, Antetokunmpo, and Tatum. But that being said, we are so early on in the season that could change. If Devin Booker starts playing as well as he has been and the Suns keep winning, you could see him really run up into that conversation also. And that being said, odds at plus 3,500 look pretty nice at this point. So with that, let's move on to our Twitter. There's a couple things that weren't really being talked about as much on news channels. They're a little bit more niche, but something that we thought was pretty interesting regarding basketball, so wanted to cover them nonetheless. So Nikola Jokic last night had a really good game, and he was making some spectacular plays, as you can see with this pass right here. A no-look falling out of bounds behind the back pass to Bruce Brown for a fast break dunk. And he puts himself in that position with how hard he works. He's the slowest person in the league, probably weighs the most in the league, and he's out there leading the break, beating the Houston Rocket guards down the floor to be able to put the Nuggets in a position to make a play like that. So Jokic is out there just doing whatever he can to make the team win. So despite being ranked 55th in usage in the league, he's only being used at 26% of the Denver Nuggets offensive possessions. He's still leading the league out of players who have played more than 10 games with an offensive rating of 125. So the Nuggets are second in the West right now. Let me hop over to our standings. I think I already got rid of them, so let me reopen that. And I can hop over to the Western Conference. So you can see the Denver Nuggets are trailing the Phoenix Suns, and they are one game back in the West in second place. So you can see the Phoenix Suns are number one. They are missing Chris Paul, but Devin Booker is putting up MVP-style numbers in his absence. So you can see the Denver Nuggets really aren't even using their best option, and they're still second in the West, one game behind. So if they really wanted to, they could start using Jokic more and probably start adding more wins to their record. But they don't necessarily need to. They can save some of their best offensive sets for playoffs. So whenever they want to use Nikola Jokic when it comes playoff time, they'll have a whole bunch of sets that they haven't ran very much throughout the regular season. So they should be able to catch a lot of teams off guard in the playoffs. So I think this is a statistic that suggests that the Nuggets might be one of the teams in the West to be most likely to make a push deep into the playoffs. So just wanted to cover that really quick as the Nuggets are playing so well. And then how could we not talk about the NBA without bringing up Tyrese Haliburton? This guy is just having a hell of a year. He got traded from the Kings to the Pacers for Domantas Sabonis, and at the time, I personally thought the Kings got the best of the deal, as Sabonis is one of the best playmaking big men of really all time, even though he doesn't really get credit for it as he should. He's kind of like the baby Jokic, you know. He's a Jokic type of player when it comes to his stat line. He just doesn't. He only gets about half the stats Nikola Jokic does. So he's definitely one of those big men that can put up a triple-double with points, rebounds, and assists at any given night. And they traded him for Tyrese Haliburton, who at the time was a promising young player, but didn't really have the output to really suggest he should be traded for Sabonis. But this year, he's showing why they made the trade. Tyrese Haliburton is leading the league in assist percentage, with 51% of his teammates' buckets coming off an assist from him. So while he's on the floor, 51% of the times his teammate scores, it's coming off an assist from him. And yeah, it's 10% higher than both Luka Doncic and James Harden, who are just over 43%. So Tyrese Haliburton is putting up a legendary season when it comes to efficient playmaking. So he is really showing people that he has a chance to become one of the most efficient playmakers this game has ever seen. And this is something that I would laugh at a year ago. So I just want to give him credit where credit is due. This guy is playing incredible. And if we go back over to the standings one more time, we were talking about how much of what was the term that you used for the soccer groupings where it was just like everyone, it was like a bloodshed, everyone was just like at each other's throats.
Death.
Yeah, group of death. The Eastern Conference is the group of death for basketball.
Right, it is. Yeah, see, you're learning. I love that you're using that shit in other sports. That's exactly what it's meant for.
Exactly. And you can see in the group of death, the Indiana Pacers are 4th in the conference. And the Pacers were supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. So that just really puts into perspective what Tyrese Haliburton is doing this year. They are beating the Philadelphia 76ers with James Harden and Joel Embiid. They are beating the Atlanta Hawks, who just traded for DeJounte Murray over the offseason. Beating the Brooklyn Nets, who have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons. The Miami Heat, Chicago Bulls. The Indiana Pacers are playing so well this year, and it's because of this guy right here. He is taking his team to the next level, and it is all because of him. But they also have a pretty good rookie out there. I suck at pronouncing his name, but McUrethane, or everyone out there, you know who I'm talking about. So
Yep.
Pacers are one to keep on your radar this season and going forward. And then one last aspect regarding basketball that we wanted to talk about really quick was Andre Drummond. So this guy is a pure big man. He is a big man at heart, and unfortunately, he found himself in a league that doesn't respect big men. When he came into the league, was like the last couple seasons where big men were actually being utilized. He got a couple All-Star appearances with the Pistons before things really fell apart for big men. During his career, you saw teams that didn't even have a big man on the roster, like the Houston Rockets at one point, were running someone that was 6'6" as their big man. So just to put that into perspective, it's just kind of like he could have been one of the great big men of all time. He just never got his opportunity. And, well, it's too late to talk about him as one of the great bigs of all time. I think he is putting himself in the conversation to talk about him as one of the best rebounders of all time. So Andre Drummond this year, again, is leading the league in rebound rate, grabbing rebounds on over 27% of all missed shots. So any shot that goes up, 27% of the time, it's going to end up in a rebound for Andre Drummond while he's on the floor. And if you dig a little bit more deeply into that statistic, offensive rebound rate, he's at 19.3%, and defensively, his defense rebound rate is 36.3%. So, and he leads the league in both. So he's the best offensive rebounder and defensive rebounder this year per 36 minutes. So he is, in my opinion, putting himself in the conversation for one of the best rebounding players the game has ever seen. So I don't know, that might be a hot take, just considering he hasn't really had much of an opportunity since he left Detroit like 10, 15 years ago. So I don't know if you guys, let me know if you guys agree with that down in the comments. Let me know if he should be considered as one of the best rebounders or not. That is something that I think might be a little bit premature, but the men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. So his numbers speak for themselves. And then one last thing really quick, just to switch from basketball over to football really quick. Deshaun Watson will be able to return to the Cleveland Browns, and I think this is significant as he will be able to get some early chemistry building going with his team. The Cleveland Browns are, I believe, 4-7, so they are out of the playoffs. There's really no hope for them this season. So this, unfortunately, the Browns weren't able to put themselves in a position to be contending when he got back. But I think that might actually work in their favor for the long run, as he's not going to be returning to the game after a couple years of not playing and then being expected to take them into a deep playoff run, which would put a lot of pressure on him and probably lead to some bad decision making and maybe just the downfall of his career for good and taking the Browns into a pretty serious rebuilding position again. So he'll get a chance to build some chemistry with no pressure for the rest of the year. And that being said, they will have a good draft pick with their position in the standings. And they already have the third best offensive line in the league. They have consistently one of the best I would say top 3 running backs in the league over the last 3 to 5 years, and Nick Chubb, and a outstanding defense also. So they have one of the best defensive lines in the league also. And while their star cornerbacks aren't playing as well, they do have some good cornerbacks and pass coverage also. So I think if you limit the amount of time the defense is on the field, they should get back to playing at the level they were before. I think it's just the offense right now isn't really able to move the chains quite as efficiently. Jacoby Brissett's having a great year for his career, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just not quite enough to be a great offensive team. So I am looking at the Cleveland Browns as a team that could really be a surprise team next year when it comes to winning a lot more games than people are expecting. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Deshaun Watson meshes with the team throughout the rest of the year. And if they decide he's the quarterback that they want to run with going forward, they can use that draft pick on a receiver. So imagine adding like a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase to the Cleveland Browns with a healthy Deshaun Watson at quarterback. You know, you got Nick Chubb, you got the defense, you got an offensive line that can give them time to actually set up the offense. So I don't know. I think this team will outperform next year, so I'm excited to see that. But I think with that, that's about all I have to add today. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Corey?
No, I think I got everything out of the way. I'm not too much of a basketball person, but no, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
It's rare to find Browns fans, so.
Yeah, I mean,
who knows? Maybe in like 4 or 5 years, everyone's on the Browns bandwagon. So you can say that we were fans before they ever got good. So I can use that soundbite 5 years down the road to prove to the haters that we've been sticking with the Browns since they've been losing. But yeah, I think with that, if you guys have any comments or questions regarding what we talked about today, just let us know in the comments and we will get back to you. Or you guys can head over to our Discord and chat with us over there, or our Twitter for that matter. So with that, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully there's some fun sports to watch tonight. We will catch you guys next episode.
1, 2